I'll tell you one other thing that I've learned as an artist that also helped me in life because art, as I found out, has whether you're painting or viewing it or doing anything creative, being a creator on some line in life, I found out it actually puts you in a higher frequency of being. There's I've read a few other things actually by L. Ron Hubbard, who also was the one that wrote Dianetics, and he discovered that there's different frequencies, which I think quite a few other people have written about this. um, the more creative you are, the higher your frequency is, and the closer you are to being really yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome to Her Ascension Story, the podcast that proves the world is transformed by every hero's personal adventure. Here we talk about the real and the raw things that we should all be talking about more. So if you want to be a part of the movement of getting real about the deeper, more meaningful things about life, be sure to subscribe and follow and get ready to get real. My hope is that this platform inspires you to explore and expand new empowering beliefs about yourself so you can make your own impassionate impact too. And those three pillars, inspiration, independence, and impact, aren't just the premise for this podcast, but for my work too. If you want to check out that more, be sure to go to herascensionstory.com or check me out on social media at Her Ascension Story. Welcome back, everyone. Today with me, I have Sylwia Herbst. She's a soulful expressionist who aims to uplift and inspire others with her artwork. She believes that art can lift us up and out of negative emotions and heal us into positive energies. Thank you so much, Sylwia, for being with us today and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm very excited.
So I'm really happy and thankful to have met you in Clearwater earlier this year, but I know that you're not native to Florida. Is that correct?
Yes, I was actually born in Poland, and I migrated here when my father was a welder, and he actually did a lot of art with welding, which was really cool. And he was sponsored by an American company to come and teach welding here in Wisconsin, out of all places. So we ended up moving there and stayed.
Wow, that is really cool. So it's really interesting to hear that your father is an artist because I love your work and I feel like your art is so spiritual in a sense because whoever is sitting there and absorbing and just taking it all in can really interpret it in unique and different ways. Have you always been creative since your father was creative, or?
Um, I actually have, ever since I can remember in this life anyway. I've always felt like I was on a search for, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to know, etc. So it's always been a spiritual journey for me ever since I can remember. And sometimes I struggled with that because I didn't have the answers to the questions I've had. And my dad he was a musician and an artist, so he encouraged me to take that on, and it became a form of calming and kind of part of finding myself, if I can say that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So at first, when I was a kid, I used to draw a lot, and it was always a form of um, kind of finding my own universe in this life. And it was, it would bring out my imagination and I could just kind of be myself in it. Um, so that was a really helpful thing that he taught me. And I still use that to this day.
Oh, that's amazing. So, going off of that spiritual theme, what are your spiritual beliefs? Do you follow any sort of religion, or um, how have you got to be where you are now
That's a very
in your
good,
spirituality?
very good question. So it's definitely been a journey. I'll tell you the short version of the story is, when I was a kid, I had a lot of losses. Um, you know, family members passing away and things like that. Losing relationships. The move to a different country was super stressful, because I felt like I lost everything I had. So in one way, it was exciting, and in other ways, it was not. Um, so I was dealing with a lot of loss, you know, um, in life, in relationships, and friends, and significant others, and things like that, family members. So there was a lot of loss. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, I was in college, I would actually walk down the street and cry for no reason, or, I didn't know the reason. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, well, is this all there is? I went to college, I had a job, I worked in finance actually, and I was doing very well in that career, but it wasn't uh, really my thing. It was like the practical thing to do, I
Mm-hmm.
went to college, I did all the things you're supposed to do in life, and I was miserable. So that's when I actually started to go on a search for the answers to life, because I didn't have them. I was brought up Catholic, which was um, good to some degree, but it didn't really provide for me what I needed to know. For instance, I had recalled and remembered some past lives, but I didn't have any explanation to that. And I was on a search for certain things and certain people, but I didn't know how to find them. So it was a confusing time in my life. So I started actually going to different religious establishments and trying to find out if they had answers. So literally, I was living in DC, in Washington, D.C., because I had gone to college there. So I would go to, I studied the Quran, and I studied different forms of the Bible, because there's apparently different versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied Buddhism, and I studied a lot. And I got different bits and pieces of things from them, um, which was good, and it helped a lot, especially to know that I wasn't wrong about these things that I had experienced. And then one day, my secretary actually at work uh, gave me a book that was called Dianetics, and it had a theory and a therapy about how the mind works, and it talked about the different um, almost voices that you can hear in your head. All those negative thoughts that you get, like you're not good enough. I don't know about this. Maybe, you can't do this. All those negative things that you find in your head.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I was struggling with that a lot. And I was given a session on this therapy. It basically gets you through some emotional loss or incident, and basically erases all the negative energy that you have and you carry around. And at that time, I went through an experience like that, and it took me from grief, just being in tears about it, to total happiness. And it was maybe about 30 minutes that I had experienced this. So,
Wow.
yeah, so that really lifted me out of that negative emotion. And I continued that because it was very helpful. And it actually took me down a path of finding out some more about my past lives, which was very exciting for me. And I knew I wasn't crazy.
Yeah, that's always a relief.
Yeah, it was really a relief. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one. Sometimes you get this feeling where you're like the only one, and no one's, you have this idea that no one else is going through this, and you feel very alone about it. So that book really shed some light on these quote unquote demons that in your universe, which are just basically negatively charged emotions that play like a radio station.
Hmm.
Sometimes they go off all at once and you can't shut them off, and so So I went through that process, and that really actually helped me get rid of all that, and just find myself in it, because I realized that there was nothing wrong with me. If I told you there's actually nothing wrong with you, all the things that you feel are wrong with you, I discovered, come from things that people have told you that they've disagreed from their own opinions or perspectives. um, which was very interesting, because if you look at it that way, you can actually strip those off. It's like false data that's hanging out next to you. You just kind of peel it off and throw it in the trash, and then there you are. So that was a very very helpful book, and it can be done. You can do it with a friend even. So it was very life changing for me. I went from feeling um, very depressed to being myself.
That's powerful.
It really is. So I'll tell you one other thing that I've learned as an artist that also helped me in life, because art, as I found out, has, whether you're painting or viewing it or doing anything creative, being a creator on some line in life, I found out it actually puts you in a higher frequency of being. There's I'd read a few other things actually by L. Ron Hubbard, who also was the one that wrote Dianetics, and he discovered that there's different frequencies, which I think quite a few other people have written about this. um, the more creative you are, the higher your frequency is, and the closer you are to being really yourself. So for me, painting is feeling like I'm really in tune with myself because of that creative flow, you know? Um, so even if you're not an artist, I think when you create in life, let's say you want to maybe decorate your home or the space that you're in, that's still a creative flow. So when you create, you get yourself on that higher frequency, and it helps you. It helps you in life. It helps you um, in. It actually increases your immune system. It boosts your immune system because you're going to a higher, more positive flow, so to speak.
That's amazing. I really like how almost scientific you are in terms of your creativity.
Yeah.
Defining it that way with frequency and how it helps boost the immune system and everything. In my work with the integrative therapy, we say that creativity boosts your life force energy. So, like your
Yes.
Shakti and your Kundalini, and we get all spiritual about it, but it's so nice to also integrate that scientific side because one of my recent guests on the podcast was actually a scientist and spent decades studying and researching, and now she's a Reiki master, and so she's meshing the science and the energetic and spiritual, and she even says that science is just now starting to catch up and
That,
explain these things that we've known for so long but
yeah,
couldn't technically prove, and
that's
that's
right.
really cool.
That's right. I completely agree with that. There's actually, I found a study it was done in, I'll tell you, the University of Westminster in 2006, and they actually studied um, people just viewing art. I'm not even talking about making it, but just viewing art, things like that you like to view. They found out that when that happens, your stress level, that hormone, cortisol, actually decreased, and it increased your endorphins. Release these endorphins, the happy kind of feel good emotional things. So it's actually been proven in the scientific world that um, creativity and imagination and art and anything like that really does have an effect on the body. and on, just overall well-being. So I love that.
Yeah, same here. I love the idea of because somebody let their creativity flow and they actually created something for them to share with the world. I mean, you go to a museum and you look at a piece of art and it wouldn't have been there without the artist, but yet because of their creativity and letting their life force flow out into the world, they ripple into your life and reduce your stress and make you feel good and all that kind of stuff. It's amazing.
It really is amazing. I look at it as a communication between beings, and it actually transcends time, because you can have someone, years ago who painted something that you're still looking at, and you kind of get in their universe, and they communicate to you and you get that communication, um, which I find amazing because it really is something that um, bypasses time, you know?
Yeah, definitely. You're so right. I mean, you go and you go to a museum, you look at these Monets and these Van Goghs and these Picassos and Jackson Pollock, and everybody is triggered in different ways, but
Yeah,
it doesn't matter the time period. I mean, it could be your next door neighbor that you're going and they have a gallery showing or something, and you go and
that's
you just
right.
feel so moved, and it really is. It's amazing, and I think that that really shows how not spiritual in a sense of like what is your universal belief or anything, just a spirit, like we are all spirits here and
That's
we
right.
feel connected and
That's right.
absolutely.
And it is that connection, I think, for me, art is definitely a connection with other beings. And I think it's the highest connection you can have, really, is communication, um, for which you don't even need words for, really, you know? Um,
Yeah,
and certain paintings can be almost alive and communicate and have a certain vibration that you pick up on. I think it's a higher form of communicating, to be honest.
I definitely agree with that. So you said that, art is a form of connection with other beings and between souls. So how do your spiritual beliefs get translated into your passion with your art?
For me, I I use it as a communication, and I don't believe that I'm a body. I believe that I have one, but I am just myself, the being. And that's kind of how I and what I use to try to communicate with my art, and I make an effort to make the art uplifting. I hope that it communicates to someone and uplifts someone, and they see part of the universe that I see, but also they add their own universe to it, which is why I like to paint on the abstract side of things, because it gives that element of it. When somebody really likes my painting, or they really connect to it, or it um, it resonates with them. They kind of are on the same wavelength. They're at that moment in time, and we communicate like that. And I find that to be amazing and very fulfilling for me as well, to have that connection with somebody.
Well, that's beautiful. And so it's very empowering and inspiring to hear where you are now. But if we can backtrack just a little bit,
Yeah.
uh, what sort of what have been the biggest obstacles to get where you are now in your life in general, overall, including art, excluding art, everything?
um, Probably the biggest obstacle is for me was dealing with losses in life. Um, there was a period of time where I had my brother passed away. I found out that my um, husband at the time was cheating for years, and then I lost several other people. So it was a pretty rough time in my 20s. Oh, and I had a miscarriage, which was also right there in that moment. It was all within a year. So that was a pretty tough time. Um, and what helped me was I realized that um, all this negative emotion that I was feeling wasn't really me. Um, it felt like I had these heavy blocks of masses, these heavy energies on me. And once I kind of stripped them off, and personally, painting during that time helped me a lot too, just to get on that creative flow and kind of dig myself out. Because all these energies, since you can take them off and get rid of them, um, are not you, right? Because you don't get rid of you.
Yeah.
You're still here. So that's kind of how I learned that all those things were not me. Even the anger and all these negative feelings that we don't like, um, they're not you, and you can kind of um, switch or transfer that energy into something positive. So that was really my focus. I actually realized that I could do that with during that time with my thoughts by focusing on the positive things that I liked or that I wanted to have or that I wanted to be, um, and really putting my focus on that and not giving so much attention to those things that were kind of trying to grab me. It felt like,
Yeah, and even if we can get, into the scientific aspect of it now, our reticular activating system, what we focus on, the emotions, the thoughts that we have, that is what we observe the most in the
that's
world.
right.
It's if you're, say you just buy a brand new white car, and when you're driving down the street, you're like, oh my gosh, I never realized how many white cars there are out in the
That's
world.
right. That's right.
And it's the same thing with these negative thoughts, anger, sadness. If you feel victimized by life, all of that, when you actually focus on that, you're just going to get more of that. And people can say that that's the law of attraction and everything else. But I love how you say and express that we have that power of choice. We can really take control and flip that switch and choose to focus on something different and therefore
Yes.
create different outcomes.
Yes, you're exactly right, Sarah. I think it is a choice, um, honestly, to just decide that you're not a victim and you can overcome anything, really. And then, kind of, you can actually, I call it crap radio when it starts to play. And you can actually just turn the station off, you know, turn the station off and turn on something else that you'd rather have. So, music is a great way of dealing with things, and art or anything creative that, that you enjoy doing. Or maybe even, I don't know, maybe you like to paint your nails and that's your thing and you really enjoy it and it takes you away from your worries, then do that.
Mm-hmm.
um, I actually made a list of all the things that I enjoy and I feel happier when I do them versus and I identified the things that were kind of sucking my energy. It took me 3 days to go through this process. To tell you the truth, I literally made a list of all the things I found toxic, and all the things that I found helpful, and creative. And then when I needed my list, I would pull it out and be like, "Okay, good, I will do this." And actually, during that process, I found a few people that I had to kind of distance myself from because. Um, they would just literally, I felt like they were vampires sucking on my energy. It's funny to say
Yeah.
that, but it's kind of true,
Oh no, there's definitely energy vampires out there, without a doubt.
you know. So, actually, another book that I came across that taught me that is called, it's also by L. Ron Hubbard. It's called Self Analysis. And it teaches you how to identify the negative people in your life and how to put yourself up, um, spiritually, just feeling a better vibe. So that book was really helpful as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So I love these tools that you're sharing, these books that you're sharing, and the idea of making that list of what's joyful and helpful and what's toxic and hurtful, or not
Mm-hmm.
hurtful, but like sort of destructive to your
That's right.
progression.
Yes.
um, so, do you feel like these tools kind of gave you that positive turning point in your life?
They really did. And the cool thing about that is it's something that I did on my own, and I felt like um, I could be cause instead of being a victim to life. I could do it myself, really, with these tools. So I'm not saying that everyone can just do things by themselves, but I'm saying that they have the power to overcome anything. I think anybody does. That's what makes us beings and, spiritual beings. Um, and I think we've kind of been made to forget what we are actually capable of doing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and what is life other than the chance to remember, put back together, and reveal who we really are, despite all of those illusions, right?
Yes, that's right. And it's funny because I've kind of found through my journey that it is for me it's a journey for truth, you know. Anytime you find some truth, it's true. You can feel it. You almost get kind of a special vibe about it, you know. And I think it's like that when you're discovering yourself. The funny thing for me, I always had this idea that I lost myself, when I was a kid, and I think a lot of people go on a search for themselves. Um, but in the end, I kind of found out that I wasn't really lost at all. Um, I had just piles and piles of crap that I kind of had to wash off me. And I was there being me the whole time. I just had these things that I needed to get rid of the baggage.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely understand that. So, what does I mean, you talk about the loss and how that has been the biggest obstacle in your path, but now what does your support system look like and how do they help you continue growing?
Actually, I have what's interesting about the loss. I'll cover one other thing because I actually um, a friend of mine taught me how to communicate with someone who has passed away. And I lost my brother years ago, and I just got in communication with him, and it was a very easy thing to do. And I realized that, you know, when someone loses a body, they still exist in the now, and we can still have that connection because spiritual beings can have that connection. So knowing that really helped me handle any loss of um, things, because you feel like you've lost everything when you can't see it anymore, but physically. But I think there are so many other ways to communicate um, with people and with each other that we've kind of forgotten how to do. It's like the same idea when you, let's say, you have a idea that you want to speak to someone, and then next thing you know they call you, right?
Hmm.
You have really just communicated with them with thought. You send out this message and they get it. They think about you. So it's obviously very possible to do that. So that's something that I'm practicing more and getting used to that communication. I practice it with my husband.
Aw,
um, sometimes we practice just by, let's say he goes to the store and I'm like, oh, I need him to get this. And let's see if he gets it. And he does. So
wow.
it's interesting. It almost like once you know you can do it, you just need to practice it a bit and it comes back to you. Um, so I feel like life is kind of for me about that now. So I'm surrounding myself with like-minded people that have the same viewpoint, which really helps because you can practice these things. Positive people um, that are not afraid to talk about these things because a lot of it, I think, we've been kind of programmed to live in fear to some degree and not look at that stuff. Um, you look at movies and all these things, and they kind of portray ghosts or spirits as freaky things. Usually, you hear about haunted houses and all these things, but I I don't feel that life is like that. So I've had, personal experiences like that. So that kind of gives me a lot of peace and calmness that, um, to me, life is beyond this body as well. And we can use other forms of communication, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that because a few years ago, I was living on the Yavapai Apache Reservation outside of Sedona, Arizona, and I
Wow.
was talking with this older Native American man, and he was telling me how he has had experiences. He grew up like this, and it has just been taught through the generations that you send a message out to somebody, and the spirits of the wind carry it to that person and deliver your message. And he would do it with his brother all the time. And so he would send a message to his brother who lived maybe a half an hour away. And instead of picking up the phone and calling, he would just be like, I really need you right now. Can you come over? And then, lo and behold, soon enough, without even calling, his brother comes over and said, Hey, I heard that you needed me.
Wow. That's
And so
awesome.
that's really cool.
Oh, you just gave me chills. That's awesome.
Oh,
No, it's true.
um,
It's true. We can do things like that. I think, honestly, I just think it takes practice.
yeah, definitely. So, what sort of goals or dreams or desires have come to fruition because of this kind of spiritual transformation that you've gone through? From being working in finance and living in
Yeah.
DC and having, like that traditional kind of living experience to where you
Yeah.
are now.
I like that you call it a traditional living experience. It's
Yeah.
true. It's very true. I, yeah, I kind of went from the practical thing, which didn't work at all, into the spiritual living. And really, I have actually, it's interesting you mentioned American Indian um, way of living, because I also have two little girls, they're 7 and 9, that I homeschool because I like to expose them to art and very creative things. And I feel that imagination is the most valuable asset you can have, and you have, because it really, your future depends on it. I think we're all artists in life. And I think we create our life and we create our future and we create our vibe and everything else. Um, so I think as long as you know you're imagining, you're not crazy.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
talking about total, disillusion, but really just spending time on imagination. And um, I was reading about how Native Americans would raise their kids, and they would basically, if the child did something wrong or bad, they would completely just ignore it, and they would really focus on the positive things that the kid was doing, and they would really acknowledge it and really make sure that kid knew their value and not their shortcomings, which I thought was
Mm.
amazing. And this is really how I choose to raise my girls, and it really works. Honestly, I don't deal in punishment or discipline or all those things. Um, I don't have to. It's interesting because when I focus on really the their strengths and I really acknowledge them, that's more of that comes out. It's whatever you put attention on that grows. It's kind of like watering a plant. Um, there was a story, I'll tell you the story because I find it interesting. There was a story about a dad and a son who was talking about, the dad was telling the kid that there's a bad wolf and a good wolf in your mind. You have the bad wolf is all the negative things and the hateful things and all those, um, the crying, etc., right? And the good wolf are all the positive things that you can imagine. And so the dad was telling the son that these wolves are often at war with each other. And then the son asks him, well, so which wolf wins? And the dad tells him, well, it's the one you feed.
Mhm.
I was like, well, yeah, it's absolutely true. So it's really what you feed that you get. And for me, this is why I feel like I've kind of made it my mission now, from taking what's helped me, with my artwork, and um, because it's been a huge tool to help me uplift myself and get myself out of anger and all that, those emotions that we can experience. And I'm kind of want to share that. So one, it's a communication for me with other beings, which I love. um, and also it's a way of dealing with stress and really uplifting yourself. So I'm actually working on a course on how to. I do some fluid art and fluid painting, which is super fun, and I'm working on a course on how to share that with others so they can use it as a stress relieving kind of tool in their life too. And you don't really need to know anything about art to do this. So that's my next project. I'll let you know when I get that done.
Yeah, definitely. That's exciting.
It is.
And oh, wow. So how do you feel like or how do you see, or how have you heard from other people how your work has impacted others with the art?
Um, you know, I think the thing that I'm hearing the most is that the colors make them feel calming, or they tell me how it creates really an uplifting feeling for them. And those are really the people that I paint for. Um, Interestingly enough, I have done also some studying on healing colors and which colors
Mm.
can act as a healing power for you. And it's different for everybody, actually. I put together a little booklet, which anybody can download off my website, and just look through the colors and what they mean and what they signify. So, for instance, like turquoise is one of my favorite colors, which I resonate with a lot. It actually helps to strengthen the general immune system and relaxes you. Um, so if you feel like you need that, you probably resonate with some art that has that color in it because it's healing for you. So that's been a very interesting thing that I've learned. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of that as well. So really, I want to help people. That's really what it's about. Um, I think we're all here to help in some way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That is really amazing. So, you shared that you had a course planned to come out, and then you also have that booklet. So, where can people stay updated on the course, and where can they find that booklet?
Awesome. So the booklet is you can download it right off my website, which is art by Sylwia, and it's spelled Sylwia.com. It's Polish, W's are pronounced like V's. So artbysylvia.com. And once you sign up for the booklet, you get that downloaded and you'll be automatically put on my email list. And when the course comes out, you will be notified about that.
Oh, awesome. Very
Yeah,
awesome.
very excited.
So I just have one last question. It's my favorite question to ask the guests. Everyone
Okay.
responds differently, so it is however you interpret it. But I also think that it's a really good question for everyone listening to ask themselves. So the question is, who is the superhero inside you that has all the power you could ever need?
Ooh, that is a good question. The simple answer for me is just me. Um, I think I see myself as a creator, really. Um, and truth is a big thing in there. I feel like when I operate on truth, it makes me grow kind of as a being. And then I can create the things that I feel I need or want, or, you really kind of create your own universe. So, yeah, that's kind of how I see myself.
Oh, that's amazing. That's how I see you too. That's beautiful.
Thanks. And I'll tell you, I guess that universe expands as I bring others into it. Um, so it grows, I think, on a connection with other people and other beings. And that's what I love. I don't like to be just me by myself in my own lonely universe. I'd like to expand it. It's the communication that really makes life special.
Oh, definitely. And thank you so much for communicating all of this with me today. I just remember talking with you down in Florida, and we were just talking about your art and just how soulful it is. And we were trying to kind of label it, and it was so hard because there's so much that goes into it. It's hard to label the spiritual stuff anyhow, right? But
It's true, but thank you for helping me with that. It was very valuable. Your input was very valuable.
oh, thanks. I'm definitely happy to help. And like I said, I'm so happy and thankful for you coming on today and sharing your story. It was such an honor, and I appreciate you so much for it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. It was definitely a pleasure. I really appreciate being on.
I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that this episode has somewhat inspired you to take control, given you the tools to feel secure and on fire in your own independence, and help to unlock within you the impact that you're here to make. You're not born with a purpose. You're born as your purpose. It's already inside of you, and it's your responsibility in this life to live that in the truest way possible. If you've gotten any sort of value out of this episode, please share it so that we can together expand our inspiration and our impact in this world.